I do have a confession. I'm wearing a tie that has the 10 Commandments on them, and I broke one of them yesterday. I stole something. I'll take it back, I promise. But I stole this. Piece of brick, tile, something. Well, I couldn't help it. I said, the Lord has need of this for a sermon today. So I swiped it from, you know that smokestack that says pet milk on it? I was over at the foot of that yesterday because I wanted some perspective, and you'll find out why. But this was at the bottom of it. I'll take it back tomorrow and put it right back on the ground where it went. Thing might be falling apart. I'm not sure I want to stand there anymore. But I'm fascinated. That was one of the first things I saw the first time I came to Greenville was, whoa, that's tall. Pet milk. Interesting. So I did a little research. And I learned why that tower is there, that smokestack. And it all has to do with tobacco. It does. In fact, the house I live in right now was an old tobacco farm. I have a tobacco barn I don't know what to do with. I guess I'll have to grow some and put in there. I don't know if that's permitted. But back in the early 1900s in Greene County, farmers were having a crisis. And the crisis centered around tobacco because tobacco was depleting the soil and they couldn't really grow it anymore. And see, it not only depletes the soil, it depletes your life when you have tobacco. And so it was doing the same thing to the earth. And there were people in Greenville that were getting desperate. What's going to happen to our economy when the tobacco's gone? And so they worked and they worked trying to find a new industry to come to Greenville. And they got hold of Pet Milk Company. And a big idea was formed. Let's get the farmers to trade their tobacco land and make it into cow grazing land. And they can buy these very expensive, high-quality dairy cows, and they can supply the Pet Milk Company. And so the factory was built in 1928. And in my research, you find obituaries even. This man worked for Pet Milk Company. He actually helped build the smokestack, and so all this neat history of Greenville. And so the smokestack went up, new industry was born, and that factory was in business until the 1980s. And all that's left now is this and a few more. In another industrial town, also many years ago, a new smokestack was being built for a factory. And smokestacks at that time, they were all brick like that one, and they were just dotting the landscape. The Industrial Revolution really brought them on, and these smokestacks required engineers that knew what they were doing. They had to be perfectly straight, perfectly cylindrical, and up they would go. And John was the best. The taller the smokestack, the more the factory wanted to pay this man named John to come and build the smokestack for them. He designed it, and he was a micromanager. He was hands-on. He wanted to see every aspect of it going up, so he would move his whole family to the new town to build the new smokestack, and it would take many months. So they'd settle in, he'd go to work, and up the stack would go. And then the last day, the stack would be finished. John would be standing on top of the smokestack, and as I was at this one here at the Pet Milk Company yesterday, I was like, I don't want to stand on top of that. I used to do stuff like that. I got old. I said, not doing that anymore. It gives me the willies. And I was looking way up at that thing and trying to picture where John was standing on one much taller than that. And he would stand there on the last day after the ceremony. Okay, it's done. And he would direct the taking down of the scaffolding. The scaffolding was as intricate a design as the smokestack was. It had to be. It couldn't lean one way or another. It had to be perfect. And he had them perfectly take it down. Because if they messed up and that thing started leaning, the thing could fall and kill people, and it could damage his work. And so he would stand up top. And at every job, he did the same thing. He stood and he walked around the chimney like this, and he would direct, okay, you take this part. He had a megaphone that he would yell at people, tell them what to do. And when the scaffolding would go down at the end of the day, he had a rope that was tied through a pulley. And at the end, he would tie it around himself, and strong men at the foot of the smokestack would lower him down. Job done. Pull the rope on through the pulley. It's done. Go to the next job. Well, on this particular job, John was standing up there. The scaffolding was down. The sun was setting. He had a nice view of the sunset from up there. Sun setting down. And it's done. Another job complete. And he walked around the smokestack to go to the rope, and his heart stopped. While he was on this side, somehow the rope came loose, and it slithered through the pulley down to the ground unnoticed. John was no dummy. He had an engineering mind, and his mind thought quickly, and his mind told him, "You're dead." End of sentence. There is no way out of this situation. It would take them weeks to rebuild the scaffolding. Helicopters had not been around yet to come and rescue him, and no ladder came anywhere near where he was. And so he deduced, I'm a goner. Utter despair hit John. He didn't know what to do. I have to jump. And I need to jump before my wife finds out about this so she doesn't see it happen. Because that is the only way down, is for me to jump. It's wintertime. I'm going to freeze to death up here. I'm jumping. I have no food, no water. Might as well just get it over with, because there is no way out. Total despair and discouragement had taken hold of John's life. In an instant, he'd gone from the heights literally and also mentally thinking, job well done, to I'm toast. It's all over. Discouragement is Satan's secret weapon. Has anybody here ever been discouraged? Just a little bit, maybe? If your hand's not raised, you're lying. Okay? And that's also against my tie. Okay. Once upon a time, 'tis stated, Satan publicly announced that he was going out of business. All the past he had renounced. And at one great public auction, he would sell his stock of tools. Some, no doubt, would buy them gladly, for this world has many fools. On the evening of the auction, people came and saw displayed many vices we could mention, all the devil's stock in trade. There was malice, there was envy, jealousy, and hatred too, sensuality and anger, and other vices, not a few. But apart from all the others lay a large wedge-shaped device, and a placard stating plainly what seemed a most outrageous price. This wedge is called discouragement, said Satan with a bow. 'Tis worth more than all else I have. I hate to sell it now. I use it more than all the rest. It is well worn, you see, and few there are who really know that this thing belongs to me. Can I but enter this great wedge within the consciousness of man, 'twill drive him to these other things and frustrate his maker's plan. The devil never sold his wedge. The price was far too high. He kept it and is using it as the centuries roll by. Did you know Satan's a soul winner? That's his job. And he does it very well. And discouragement is his favorite soul-winning device. Almost every character in the Bible is afflicted with discouragement at some point in their lives. Think of Moses wandering all that time in the wilderness being followed by a bunch of complainers. Talk about discouraging. Think of Jeremiah. You remember all the things God asked him to do that were really just strange? And still, nobody seemed to pay attention. Think of Jonah sitting on the hill waiting for God to destroy Nineveh, only to be humiliated by God's mercy. Think of Noah preaching for years to thousands and not winning a single convert. The list goes on and on. But when we think of discouragement, one man seems to really stand out from the rest. 3 letters. What's his name? I heard it. Job. If we combined all the trials and problems that each of us has had in our lives, they probably would not add up to what Job went through in a very short period of time. Even today, we compare someone who's facing many troubles at once. Oh, you're having a Job experience. Just listen to a few of the words from this faithful but discouraged man of God. Did you know that you can be faithful and discouraged at the same time? Well, that was Job. Remember, God says, that's my faithful servant. Yeah, but he's very discouraged right now. Just listen to what Job has to say. Let the day perish wherein I was born. Have you ever wished you weren't born? I heard of a teenager once that said to his parents, I didn't ask to be born. And the mom said, if you had, we'd have said no. Oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed and my calamity laid in the balances together. I will not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Can you do that to God? He's still called God's faithful servant. God can take it, by the way. Oh, that I might have my request, even that it would please God to destroy me. Then I would have some comfort. That's a man with words of total discouragement. Just a few words from chapters of like sentences. On the topic of discouragement faced by God's people, Prophets and Kings says this. Into the experience of all, there come times of keen disappointment and utter discouragement. Not just discouragement, utter discouragement. Days when sorrow is the portion, and it is hard to believe that God is still the kind benefactor of his earthborn children. Days when troubles harass the soul till death seems preferable to life. It is then that many lose their hold on God and are brought into the slavery of doubt, the bondage of unbelief. Could we, at such times, discern with spiritual insight the meaning of God's providences, we should see angels seeking to save us from ourselves, striving to plant our feet upon a foundation more firm than the everlasting hills, and new life, new faith would spring into being. Though weary of life, Job was not allowed to die. To him were pointed out the possibilities of the future, and there was given to him the message of hope. From the depths of discouragement, Job rose to the heights of implicit trust in the mercy and saving power of God. Triumphantly, he was later able to declare this, words from the same man. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. He also shall be my salvation. I know my Savior lives. Quite a reversal of what had been seemingly impossible situation. I believe God knew that we would need the book of Job to bring us courage for what we face. This world's full of sorrow. In fact, this week, one of our former students passed away. Her name was Chippo, died of cancer. One of our best students at Maxwell Academy in Kenya. And our hearts are broken. This world's full of sorrow. Such a sweet kid, so young. But she died trusting in Jesus. When I read, though he slay me, yet will I trust him, it reminded me of Sally Sally was the best dog I ever had. I love Sally. When I was a little boy, my dad took me to the edge of our woods where I had a fort. I couldn't call it a playhouse because I was a boy. This is my fort. And the fort was made out of a couple of old piano crates my dad had nailed together. And he took me by the hand and he says, "Come, I have something I want to show you. Look under your fort." And I stooped down and I looked, and out from under my fort came to greet me 7 puppies. I could see the stray mother up in there. Yeah, this dog came out of nowhere, had puppies under your fort. And they were all different colors, some plain, some spotted. Wow. I was so excited. All these puppies coming up and licking me and stuff. And I was having a good time. And so every day we would go down to my fort a couple of times a day to go see the puppies and watch them grow. And we'd start taking them food when they got a little bigger. And they started, the mother never came out. And some of the other puppies seldom did, but one of them always did. Just a plain tan puppy. And she would come out. She was always the first one out. Maybe 2 or 3 others would come, but she was always there. And she was always the last to leave as well. And so one day, I went down there to look at the puppies, and this one came out. Nobody else did. I got down and I looked, and all the puppies were gone, including the mother. One puppy stayed behind, and her name became Simple Sally. Quickly turned to just Sally. And she chose to stay when the rest of the family left. And she grew up to be the smartest, most loyal dog I could imagine. She instinctively knew our unfenced 4-acre property line and would run the whole thing when my dad would say, "Clear the area, Sally." In fact, that property line butted up against Larry Haney's brother's property. But she wouldn't go on his property. He must have been a mean man. I don't know. But she wouldn't go on that property. But she I don't know how she knew that property line. We say, "Clear the area, Sally." And that dog would run the circuit. And she knew her job was to make sure every squirrel was in its tree and every rabbit was in its hole. And she would come back wagging her tail. I did my job. But it always bothered me when my dad was working with a hoe in the garden, getting those weeds, and a neighbor would come by to talk to him, and he'd say, "Hey, let me show you something." And Sally, of course, was right by his side, and watch this. And he would raise his hoe up into the air like he was going to slaughter that dog. The dog would never run away. Sally, instead, when she see that hoe raise up, she would lay down with her neck like this, going, "I'm yours. Kill me if you wish." And it bothered me, like, don't do that to my dog. You're disturbing her. But she would just lay there with her throat up. "Go ahead, take my life. Though you slay me, yet will I trust you." Even through discouragement, Job developed an amazing trust in his heavenly Father. There are different types of discouragement. Job seemed to have had experience with most of them. 3 types seem to assail us most often: physical, temporal, and spiritual. If you remember, Job had his share of physical problems. Satan's last attack was a covering of boils, head to foot. The God that healed and comforted Job was the same God that walked on this earth and healed and comforted the multitudes. And it's the same God that can take care of you and me. Many of us blame God for things that happen. Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." When Jesus walked this earth, he spent his time healing the results of sin, the true cause of our problems. He was a reflection of the Father. What are often called acts of God are acts of the evil one. God is the healer. He is the answer for our discouragements. Another type of discouragement is called temporal. We've all experienced it, and it plagues my family constantly. It comes from having too much to do and too little time to do it. You ever feel that way? Too much to do, I can never get all this done. Have you ever woken up in the morning and thought about all that needed to be accomplished that day and said, man, maybe if I just stay in bed, it'll all go away? Like a bad dream. It's times like this that we can claim some of the promises in Scripture. Like Matthew chapter 11. Turn to Matthew 11. Matthew 11, 28 to 30, which to me is one of the most refreshing and encouraging texts of Scripture. Matthew chapter 11. You know this verse. Verse 28. Come to me, all you who labor and what? Are heavy laden. And I'll give you more to do. Is that what it says? Wrong version. And I will give you what? Oh, isn't that a word? By the way, do you know what today is? Goes back to this, another commandment. Rest. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find what? Rest for your souls. I love that word. I need to experience that more often. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Oh, but this is Old Testament as well. Look at Isaiah 41. Turn back to Isaiah chapter 41. Isaiah chapter 41, find verse 10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who were incensed against you shall be ashamed and disgraced. You ever had people against you? Well, he says what's going to happen to them. They shall be as nothing, and those who strive with you shall perish. You shall seek them and not find them. Those who contended with you, those who war against you shall be as nothing, as a non-existent thing. For I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, fear not, I will help you. This is not a promise that God's going to keep trouble away from you. It's a promise that he's going to hold your hand through it. He's going to help you. When we need help, God is the one we should rely on, not ourselves. In another old factory many years ago, my grandfather worked in the hosiery mill. Lots of complicated textile machinery with an intricate web of threads running everywhere. In a similar factory, these instructions were posted in bold letters on a large sign, bright red. If your threads get tangled, call the foreman. A woman was working at a machine in which her threads became tangled. She tried and tried to fix the mess, but everything she did made matters worse. The foreman noticed the situation and sighed his frustration as he tried to untangle the mess the worker had made. The worker answered the unspoken rebuke by saying, I did my best. The foreman replied, remember this, doing your best means sending for me. The best that we can do is hand our tangled lives over to the Creator. We can do nothing on our own but make it worse. The same goes for when we become spiritually discouraged. Satan has brought down the mightiest of prophets with this type of discouragement. Remember this discouragement of Elijah? He has just had the greatest victory you can imagine. I've seen the mountain where it happened. I said, wow, I wish I could go up there. Where he conquered Baal. Fire came down from heaven, burned up his sacrifice, and we find him running from an infuriated woman. This came after one of the greatest spiritual victories of all time. But Job, like Job, Elijah just wanted to die. Satan uses spiritual discouragement on you and me, showing us pictures of ourselves and telling us that we are not good enough for God. He's done that to me a lot. I finally developed this response. I said, Satan, you're absolutely right, but God's good enough for me. And we can claim for promise found in Isaiah 46, 1 and 2, which says this: God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with swelling. A very present help in trouble. When we become discouraged, Satan has no mercy on us. Have you ever thought of Satan going, oh, I think he's had enough. I'm going to leave him alone for now? No. He tries to pull us deeper and deeper into despair. But no matter how discouraged we may become, no matter how bleak the outlook is, no matter how impossible the situation seems, there is always a way out. There's always a reason to hold on to what is dear. So many want to give up the fort just before the cavalry arrives. So many do not see the beacons burning that herald the soon coming king. Have you ever just said, oh, Jesus, come now and get me out of my situation? I have. But no, he's coming to get the whole world out of this situation. So many need to know that there's always a way. Where we see no way, Jesus sees 10,000 ways. He begs us to place our lives in his hands and be content with a peace that passes understanding. Then situations that once seemed impossible suddenly become possible. I was telling you about John standing in utter despair on top of the smokestack. You remember him? Ready to commit suicide. Well, people down below said, he's going to do it, isn't he? He's going to jump. You, go get his wife. We can't bear this to happen. And somebody ran and got his wife while he's up there considering jumping. And she comes running because she knows her husband well. She says, that man's going to kill himself. Yeah, I know he's brilliant. He's going to outsmart himself is what he's going to do. And she ran as fast as she could. And John looked down. He saw his wife coming into the crowd. And he said, oh, great. Now I can't jump. It's even worse than it was before. All right, there's no way out of this. And she grabs a megaphone from the bottom. And she says, what are you thinking? And he says, what else can I do? And she said, what are you wearing? He says, what are you talking about? What are you wearing? I'm wearing this sweater you knit for me last Christmas. It's cold up here. Well, take it off. But it's cold up here. Take off the sweater. Well, I don't have anything else to do. Might as well obey my wife. He took off the sweater, and then she said, unravel it. You're like, what are you? But you made it for me. Don't argue with me. Unravel that sweater. He started to unravel it. He had nothing else to do. And then it hit him what she had in mind. And he starts unraveling it faster and faster and faster and faster until there's no sweater left. And then he tied a little piece of mortar to the end of the sweater and lowered it down. And all the yarn that it took to make the sweater reached the ground. To the end of that yarn, a worker quickly tied a bit of twine, and he was able to pull the twine all the way to the top. And when he got the twine in his hands, they tied the rope that had fallen to the twine, and he was able to pull the rope back up to the pulley, and then he was down in the arms of his wife. Where there seemed no way possible, there was a way. There may be times when you sink into utter discouragement, but there's a thread of divine love that comes from the throne of heaven. Grab it. It may seem small, but it's golden, and it will lift you from this world into the arms of the one you love the most. This peace is possible for your life, and it's only a prayer away. There's always a way with Jesus.